Hey everybody, another video from Thailand. This is kind of a commentary on another video I saw. One of my friends posted. It was actually on TikTok, and it's in Thai, and I had to do a little Google Translate because my Thai is nowhere near as good as the speaker of the video, who's a young American here in Thailand, who's learned Thai pretty darn well. Um, I'm still in the process of that. Um, it says he wants to stay. His name's Julian, goes by the Thai nickname Taengmo, which is the Thai word for watermelon. I don't have like an official Thai nickname yet that I've adopted. One friend gave me the nickname Chang Noi Narak, shortened it to Chang Noi. That means cute little elephant for you English speakers. Um, but it was just kind of adopted within her little group. Um, I came here and it's like, yeah, I like this place. I want to stay. Um, totally relate on that. And also totally relate on running into many a Thai, especially younger Thai, although not exclusively, who think that America's just an awesome place, and being from there, we're like, not exactly. They just have a very skillful and sneaky PR department. Um, and yeah, I'd like to eventually become good enough at Thai that I could get citizenship. I'm not there yet. It's a process, and that's okay. Um, but definitely some mixed feelings on the commentary. Now he's speaking to. He's a young guy. He calls himself a teenager. I would have guessed him to be early 20s, but close enough. Um, and if Dengmo sees this, then hey, great, he can talk to me more about it. Um, but the fur, because I was a teacher here, and definitely ran into many Thai youth who did have an idolized image of the U.S. I probably would have listed some different examples. He's also trying to tell them, like, hey, why are you so unthankful towards your government and that sort of thing. Now, I do see it a bit differently than he does. I mean, I totally agree that Thailand's a great place, and you got to give uh, some thanks to the government that made it that way. Um, not to say it's perfect, but I like it here. I really do. Um, and he's trying to say, like, hey, I'm a teenager too, which obviously I'm not. Um, but I've been one, and I know that when you're a teenager, you don't like government. You don't like your government. You might like another one, but that's part of teenage rebellion. Um, and what has to be clarified here is that the opposition is helps foster that whole American PR department because they're in the pockets of Wall Street in London. And that's a whole other topic that I won't go too much into on this one. Um, but it starts off talking about Thailand's so much safer a place. I agree. It is. um, However, okay, me and Taengmo are both men. So the world is in general safer for us. And I do think as best I can estimate, Thailand is safer for women too. And I base that on seeing significantly, although not huge numbers, but significantly more women walking alone at night. However, and I know in the States, I have known some women who walked alone at night and got raped. I have not had any Thai women as of yet share that experience with me. Share having had that experience with me. But I have had a few say they were scared to go into certain rural areas by themselves at night. Um, yeah, still, I think it's a much safer place, but in general, as men, we have to understand that universally in the world we live in, it's not as safe for women. So there's a part of me where the commentary on that one really needs to come from women. Um, Additionally, yeah, again, uh, yeah, I'll say Thailand is a much safer place. However, I'll also say that there is a significant amount of paranoia among a lot of white Americans about poor black and Chicano neighborhoods. Most of them are just fine, and you'll be just fine going through them if you're just being cool. But there's a shitload of white folks there who will shit their pants if they have to walk through or even drive through one. And I've certainly met my share of Americans and other white folks here in Thailand who would shit their pants if they had to walk through a black or brown neighborhood, even though they'd probably be totally fine. Um, to me, what I think is more significant, and where I'd say you need to actually go there and see stuff before you think that America is such a cool place, it's not the safety factor, it's the economic inequality. They need to see just how much more homelessness there is in the States. And while that's filled with a lot of people who are in a bad state, perhaps a lot have mental illness thanks to back in the 80s, Reagan closing a lot of asylums and putting a lot of mentally ill people out on the street, as well as drug use and things that can be pretty rampant. Because hey, when you're homeless, you're looking for something to take your mind off that. It's not a judgment of homeless people. It's just a sad condition of some of their reality it's just sad. They're not homeless people though, for the most part, are not going to hurt you. But I think that's a much more significant thing to look at. Now, being here, I'm not saying there aren't any uh, homeless beggars here in Thailand. There's some, and it got a little worse when the economy took a hit thanks to COVID, but it's still nowhere near, not even close, to the number you see in the U.S. So that's where I'd say you need to what I think really is something you got to see. And yeah, you can see that on YouTube too, if you can't make it there. Now, in terms of talking to the young people, it's normal. You know, it's normal for young people, for teenagers, young adults, to hate government, and I don't necessarily mind that in and of itself because it is a universal teenager thing. And you're supposed to think of how it could be done better so that when you want to go into politics, you can make it better. That's human, that's universal. The problem, though, is that the creativity has been high. The youthful rebellion and impetus for change has been hijacked by Western puppets. And so they're not really thinking of new solutions. They're just thinking that somehow if we adopt these Western ways, although they probably won't be thinking in quite those terms, but if we adopt this other model, that things will be a lot better. And even when he says, well, I'm a teenager, I understand, teenagers don't want to hear good stuff about authority figures, even from other teenagers. And I think Taengmo has to realize that it's a lot easier to for him to make that commentary about Thai authority figures because they're not his authority figures. It's easier for me to make it too. Now, one thing that I really liked when I first came here, and I continued to experience, is, I like going into the temples. There's just amazing art and architecture in a lot of Thai temples. And one thing I noticed real quick is that you'd often see kids running around. Or even if there was like I remember a mother I knew with a little girl, she was attending some sort of chanting session with her little, and she had to bring her little girl along, but she asked me and a friend to kind of keep an eye on her. But while she's deeply into her meditative chanting, she's not trying to get her little girl to do it too. She's just letting her little girl sit beside her and play games on a cell phone. In the West, most religious institutions, regardless of where they come from or what specific religion we're talking about, but oftentimes the adults will try to make the kids act like little adults, which just really kind of frustrates them. Here I saw a lot more in the temples of just letting kids be kids, and if we as adults want to be somber, well, that's our own issue. That's our own problem. If we can't, they don't seem to blame little kids being little kids for breaking their somber focus and concentration. Um, but then when I started being a teacher, and I started noticing that the school system in Thailand was pretty much the same thing as it is in the US. And I even asked the students, because I'm not one who wants students to kiss my ass, and I want them to be able to speak freely. Not to mention the fact that it turned out that the English classes I were teaching were compulsory and not voluntary. I asked the students, okay, what do you hate about school and what do you hate about English? And long story short, it became very, very clear to me that their complaints, I'm teaching junior high and high school, and their complaints about school in Thailand were pretty much the same complaints I had when I was in high school in the US. Rote memorization, things they didn't feel were very practical in life that they'd never use, that sort of thing. And I was wondering why. Like, how is it that you have a completely different mindset here religiously? And it seems much more open, much more understanding of children. And then you go to the schools, at least the ones I saw, these were both in Isan, and they were both the government flagship schools. Now, I did not teach, but did one day go to an event at just a very small rural school, and the kids seemed very happy there. It's this school that was probably looked down upon for not being prestigious, but kids were happy, and I think that counts for a lot. But at least these particular schools I was in, like, these are Western schools. If anything, they're really old school Western schools. What's going on? And I realized, I'm like, well, wait a minute, it's not like the Western schools. It is the Western schools. It's like somehow that model got, at least in some schools, transplanted right into Thailand. And I think it's actually, I don't particularly like that model. It screws a lot of kids up. And it probably screws Thai kids up worse when forced upon them, because it's so contradictory to other things in the culture. And so when these young Thai kids have this, they have this disdain for their own government, which again, in and of itself, I don't mind, because that's a normal teenager thing, even if, like I said, it's been hijacked in a major way. I'll even go so far as to say, and this is another whole story, but it was very clear that the foreign language, or at least the English classes, were a Western infiltration op. Now, I don't know necessarily who was behind it. Certainly, it's not like some big conspiracy among all the teachers, but when it only takes a few people in the right positions to exert subtle influence. Um, and so here you have this disdain for their own government, yet an idolization of another system. And that's why I think the what would be a better counter to the Western PR machine for young ties is not the safety factor, but the income inequality factor. Because they'll complain about the government being, just a bunch of rich people. Granted, the Western-backed opposition they follow is a bunch of rich people too. um, but yet here they are idolizing America because it has a shitload of money. Despite the income inequality thing, they don't quite grasp. And so it's like, is it anyone with capitalism being so pervasive in the world? Is it then any? And then you have here these young ties who have this basically like old Western school system that they're in, that they think is their government's fault. It's their responsibility, yeah, but fault, well, not really. So you have this, you're in this capitalist system, which might be Western spawned, but is certainly around the world, and Thailand certainly has plenty of it. Is it any wonder that the students kind of almost, the young Thais, have this almost schizoid mentality where on the one hand they're hating the rich here, but are idolizing the money of America. One thing that I definitely noticed was, the reason why the current government got whooped in the latest election, mainly because of the young vote, isn't because they did all that bad a job. They did a pretty good one, if you ask me, as far as governments in a capitalist system go. But they arrogantly lost the PR war by forfeit. Now, I'm cool with I like the idea of actions speak louder than words and let your actions speak for themselves, but it's kind of naive. In this world of mass media, to think you can not play the PR game and come out okay. It sucks that it is that way, but it's a reality. So I think It's going to take more than just telling them to trust their elders and their government, because that's what they're already hearing and already rebelling against. One thing where I made the statement earlier that I felt that the English language programs that I ended up teaching in were some sort of Western infiltration op. And one of the things that kind of clued me into this was like, I had students complain that they'd try to engage with teachers in political discussion and get told, oh, just leave that to the people who know better. But, and I could see the current government kind of doing that, but the thing that really countered that had me going, wait a minute, whoa, wasn't that, but juxtaposed with that, never being told by any of the Thai teachers or faculty not to talk about anything political. Because although pretty much every government has a few idiots in it, in some cases a lot of them, no government is going to be so stupid as to not want kids asking political questions, but then bringing in foreigners and letting them say whatever they want. It's just not going to happen. That lets you know there's infiltrators. Very dangerous, very insidious infiltrators. Where was I going with this? So for me, the way to, go, and for me it was to say, well, hey, it ain't what it's cracked up to be. You give them validation for their feelings, but then, well, okay, really focus on, okay, well, oh, you want things to change? Well, what are you going to do? What do you think? And really see if they're thinking it out deeper. And challenge them. Challenge them to think that out deeper. And it's like, in the whole red shirt, yellow shirt thing, I tend to support the yellows because, not because I agree with everything they do or say or all their philosophies. And I could say the same thing about the reds. But where I support the yellows over the reds is simply the fact that they are nationalistic. Now, nationalism can go too far, but I don't necessarily think it is in this case. Whereas the Reds are sellouts to the West, more specifically to the Western corporatocracy and Western elites. And, at least the yellows won't kowtow to Washington. But they've made the mistake of doing it in a very arrogant way. Well, you can see what happened in the election. He got whooped. And I see it as kind of like, the current government, Prayut and company, military, they're kind of like a overprotective parent who doesn't realize that their overprotectiveness is actually pushing the kids, and I hate to refer to all, I'm not trying to refer to all Thai people as children, but seeing as how this is a phenomenon among the younger crowd especially, that they're pushing they don't understand how their overprotectiveness, and they're not willing to engage and say, just trust me, I know better, is pushing the Thai youth towards the predator more than it is protecting them from them. And there's not an easy answer to that. Yeah, I'll support the parent over the predator any day. The parent needs to be called out that their techniques ain't working. So, yeah, it's a very tricky situation. And it's not going to be solved easily. It's going to take the work of patiently explaining. Rather than just saying, trust me. I think I'll end it here.